a 24:21 in July 2017, and pushing the record below the next minute barrier would prove to be a tall order. In fact, it would take him 1 year and 8 months of on and off playing, but after 20,000 attempts, the 23:58 was here. The run is still standing strong today and is coming up to its 3rd year at the top, and is generally viewed as one of the greatest Spyro records of all time. Today, we're gonna take a look at how Jeremy did it, and how Spyro 3 was completed in under 24 minutes.
What the?
Now this is a perfect example of a molding speedrunner, and you don't want to be this guy. Couple more rages like that and he could lose all his beautiful hair. But that's why I recommend Keeps. Keeps is a subscription-based service that focuses on preventing male pattern baldness. 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of baldness by keeps.com/Ricky. A trick you'll see a lot throughout this run: proxy jumping. When Spyro does a charged jump and you try to tap X as you're descending from the jump, Spyro will do a tiny stutter in the air. If you kill an enemy and do the stutter on the hitbox of an enemy's dead body, you'll be sent up into the air with high velocity. This allows Jeremy to go through the top of a building and skip straight to the end of the level. Since this is the any % category, Jeremy does not need to acquire all 100 eggs for the final boss entry. Instead, the objective is to rescue a character at the end of each level, which is simply done by finding and talking to them. Upon rescuing them, they will exit the portal and help you reach the next world, once you've rescued them all. Jeremy compiled a big spreadsheet with his consistency on all the major and minor hurdles in the game. It should give you an idea of how unlikely it is for this run to have come together. Immediately after Sunny Villa, we have one of the most precise tricks in the game, with Jeremy's success rate being roughly 45% for a first try. Jeremy first lines his camera up in a precise way, and then charges forward to scrape the topmost pixels of the waterfall. With this, he triggers one of the most classic Spyro glitches: the swim in air. Spyro's swimming speed is very fast, and Jeremy can essentially go out of bounds wherever he pleases. But his next destination is Seashell Shore. This level has a 14 egg requirement for entry, but every level's loading zone in Spyro 2 and 3 is located directly beneath where the portal would be. So if you can reach it, you can enter the level early without getting the eggs, as Jeremy does in his run. In Seashell Shore, another proxy jump is used to skip to a later part of the level. Proxies have a wide range of variable heights, and Jeremy got the lowest possible height to make this one work. If Jeremy got a higher launch, he would have been able to save another second from going through the top of the wall. But the moment the proxy happens, Jeremy has to react on the spot, and go for a backup strat if he doesn't get the desired height. He then enters a bonus challenge and quits out. Otherwise, the game won't put you in a swimming state, where you won't be able to hit the squid and finish the level. Next up is Molten Crater, which requires 10 eggs to unlock. So once again, we'll need to hit the loading trigger below the map. The entry into the level was said to be the hardest skip back when Tuval ran the game, but Jeremy makes it look easy and has it down to a T. The same goes for the boar proxy at the start of the level, something that used to be hard, but Jeremy is extremely consistent at it. He simply cruises to the end of the level and moves on with the run. With 2 more levels to go in the first homeworld, it's luckily smooth sailing. In Cloud Spires, the developers put the end of the level just a little too close for us speedrunners. And of course, we're gonna take advantage of that, and complete the level in around 20 seconds. For the last level in Sunrise Spring, you may remember this guy, Moneybags, who always wants the gems you've worked so hard to collect. Luckily for us, we can rescue Sheila without paying this greedy dirtbag. In the tunnel across from Cloud Spires, there's a flight power-up that you normally use to get an egg at the end of the tunnel. But Jeremy turns around immediately upon grabbing the power-up, uses it to fly out of bounds, and grabs another swim in air from the water texture that's sticking out slightly from the wall, where he then flies into the Sheila Zalp loading trigger, skipping the Moneybags payment completely. This level is also fairly straightforward. You just have to take out some mushroom houses and enemies to escort a goat to the end of the level. Upon freeing all 5 characters, you'll get a convenient teleport to the balloon, which is why the levels are done in a specific order. Before moving on to Midday Gardens, we have to fight Buzz, which is a pretty easy fight as opposed to the later ones. Jeremy just has to stand near the border of the arena to get Buzz to stop rolling. In the later stages of the fight, Buzz will have a firewall around him that you need to wait out. Jeremy turns the camera sideways in order to despawn the firewall to make him vulnerable as quickly as possible. Rinse and repeat until he's defeated. Now it's time for Midday Gardens, home to some of the most difficult execution in the run. It's very easy for speedrunners to be on autopilot during the opening part of the run, but at some point, the difficulty starts ramping up, and you have to start paying attention. The turning point for Spyro 3 is definitely Midday Gardens, and despite its difficulty, Jeremy delivers one of the fastest Hub 2s the world has ever seen in this very run. Jeremy first needs to head to Sergeant Bird's base, which has a 700 gem requirement for entry. We've barely collected any gems or eggs so far, so we'll need another way in. Another swim in air can be used by going into this pool of water and squeezing the bottom of the bridge with the surface of the water, to clip Spyro out of bounds with a well-timed charge. In Sergeant Bird's base, you have to escort the Hummingbird to the end of the level, but the Hummingbird's pathing is quite complex. There are a few mandatory checkpoints that Jeremy needs to pass through to get the Hummingbird to move forward. But you can also get optional checkpoints by defeating certain enemies as you're going through, which can save upwards of 5 seconds over the course of the level. Jeremy takes care of this with ease and moves on to the next level. Next is Spooky Swamp, where Jeremy climbs some scenery to clip through a wall, and once again enters the level early without fulfilling the egg requirement. In the level, Jeremy does another proxy jump off of an alligator to soar across the water to get to the end quickly, with some additional egg hovering swag at the end. 70% of runs make it past the alligator proxy at the start of the level, so it can cost some runs to end here. Proxies start getting a lot harder when the enemy you're proxying off is smaller, but if the alligator is considered small, just you wait for the next level. Jeremy now goes out of bounds to head to Bamboo Terrace, which is home to the second hardest proxy in the game, with Jeremy's estimate being a 40% success rate. The strategy for a while was to defeat all the enemies at the start and go for a trick that's known as a squeeze proxy, which was done by wedging yourself between the wall and the rolling rock as the pandas were pushing it, then gliding through a wall to get to the end. However, the end of the level is straight across to the right as you spawn, but the bridge to get across only comes down once you beat the level. This is where our tiny bug friend comes to our aid, as he provides us with a very tricky proxy to get on top of a rooftop. Afterwards, a trick called the Sproder Man is used to climb along the wall without losing much height. And yes, those are the words Spyro and Spider-Man put into a blender. With 2 levels to go in Midday Gardens, Jeremy tackles Enchanted Towers next, with his main goal being to flame 3 rockets to destroy the Sorceress statue at the end. The start of the level and the statue is separated by a huge wall, and to get over it, Jeremy will use a unique strategy that doesn't include a proxy. He first jumps onto a ledge and makes his way to a pillar that's barely reachable with a charge jump glide into hover, where he does it once more to get on top of the wall. He then drops down and flames the rockets to close out the level. Finally comes Icy Peak, which has always been the level that's been saved for last among top runners, due to how isolated the portal is from the others. Jeremy starts out by jumping onto the cannon and taking out the big ice wall at the start. You can in theory jump around it, but it's extremely hard and only saves a second and a half, so Jeremy deemed it to not be worth it. He now performs a jump from the beginning to the end, and this one is always a bit of a clincher. Jeremy makes this jump look easy, and gets past it 80% of the time, but this long soar to the end is a huge killer for new players. All that's left is climbing the stairs, and rescuing the final NPC in Midday Gardens. Jeremy now has to face Spike, the second boss of the game, and with an already difficult world, now comes a very difficult boss. It takes 6 hits to take down Spike, and Jeremy wants to take his health down as low as possible here, for a trick later in Hub 3. This fight is one of the highlights of Jeremy's run, so I'm just gonna let you watch it in full.
My tactical
A 25-second fight with all of his health points drained. Perfect. Jeremy was now 3 seconds ahead of his best ever pace out of Spike. In other terms, this is the fastest run in the world up until this point. Let's see how it continues to unfold. Evening Lake. A calm exterior, yet more brutal levels await behind the curtain. Only a small handful of Jeremy's runs make it to Evening Lake, and while he's had some good runs to this part, none are as fast as this one, so the nerves slowly start to settle in. The first level, Bentley's Outpost, luckily isn't too bad. To get into the level, Jeremy gets Spyro on top of a ladder, and initiates a glide to get out of bounds. The wall collision Jeremy flies through has a weird quirk. Spyro 3 has 2 NTSC versions of the game, in what the community calls 1.0 and 1.1. For some reason, the collision on the walls in Evening Lake was made significantly higher on 1.1. You can still get out of bounds to enter Bentley's Outpost early, but it loses about a second or two. The Spike is Born cutscene is also missing on 1.0, which allows any runner with 1.0 to save 5 seconds heading into Spike. 1.1 does gain back a few seconds in a handful of spots, but overall, 1.0 saves around 6 seconds over the course of the run, so that's the version Jeremy used to get this run. The out of bounds into Bentley's Outpost also means that not a single gem is given to this Mr. Monopoly looking head ass, so that's always great, isn't it? In Bentley's Outpost, Jeremy makes sure to load the seals onto the screen at the right time, to initiate their cycle of throwing their snowballs, so when he gets near them, he can reflect them back without wasting any time. Afterwards, you're supposed to reflect a snowball to hit the gong, but it's easily reachable from the ground. The rest of the level is just pushing some blocks, to create a path to escort Bentley's brother to the end. Simple stuff. Frozen Altars is more of what we've already seen, with the developers putting the end of the level conveniently right at the start. A proxy off a mammoth allows Jeremy to get to the other side of the temple. As a side note, Jeremy got the lower proxy height in this run. If you get additional height, you can go through a hole on the right side of the temple, to save a couple of extra seconds. Oh, and thank God we don't have to do any boxing in this run. I could almost make a separate video talking about how bad this minigame is for speedrunning. Moving on though. Using the same out of bounds as before, we now enter Fireworks Factory, home to the hardest trick in the game, the Firefly Proxy. A trick so impactful, the second fastest option is 35 seconds slower. And yes, that does mean running all the way around the level the normal way. Jeremy actually misses the Firefly Proxy in this run, so instead of going all the way around, it's faster to die to get the Firefly to respawn for another attempt, which he hits on his second try. This is the only major mistake Jeremy made in this run, but it's no surprise as he estimates a first try to be a 35% chance of success. Again, keep in mind, 35% is merely Jeremy's success rate with the trick as a whole. The movement of the Firefly and also other creatures you're trying to proxy on can vary in its pathing. What threw Jeremy off here was the Firefly's sudden turn to the left, causing him to miss his flame by a hair. Despite the death, the run was still well alive, as Jeremy heads to Lost Fleet, where he uses 2 piggybacking enemies to give him a little boost. Hey, I've seen this before. Now that's 2 PlayStation classics with a piggyback boost. Technically, this trick doesn't accomplish all that much, since we left Crazy Ed behind, who we have to escort to the end. But by running through the ship and getting the checkpoint right before the end, then dying, Crazy Ed will respawn corresponding to the checkpoint you're on. This is why Jeremy wanted to take damage during the spike fight, so he could avoid bouncing on the goop to die quicker. But the Death and Fireworks Factory set him back to full health. After respawning for the Death Warp, Jeremy has to shoot a hole in the ship with the cannon, where he does a small shortcut by using the tip to make it across. After completing the level, Jeremy doesn't quit out right away as usual. He heads back to the goop to trigger the zombie glitch. Essentially, by pausing right before Spyro is about to die from the goop, you can quit out of the level, making the game think he's dead when he's really not. This is a frame-perfect pause, and if you pause early, there's no super easy way to advance the game 1 frame forward. Just a good gut feeling and timing, making this trick a rough 70% chance of success. The zombie glitch has a couple of side effects, but the one we're looking for in this run is this one. Yup, you can carry the swimming state through the surface of the water, which is how Jeremy makes his way into Charmed Ridge. Here, you have 3 enemies to attempt the proxy to the end with, making the success rate fairly high. In this run, Jeremy doesn't need any of that, and nails it using the first guy, and gets the best proxy height too. He glides to the end with ease, and finishes off the final level in Evening Lake. Up until this point, every trick that's been labeled with a percentage has more or less been in Jeremy's control. Sure, there's some different pathing the AI can take for the proxies, and the spike fight had a bit of luck involved. But all of that pales in comparison to what's next. Now it's time for Scorch. This arena might as well represent hell. RNG hell. Your main assistant in this fight is Bentley, who will circle the arena and spawn rockets for you. You can either get 1 big green rocket or 50 small red rockets. You would think the big green rocket does more damage than the small red ones. But see, that's where you decided to use logic. There's literally no damage difference between the two, meaning you always want the 50 red ones. With all the tricks Jeremy's had to do thus far, less than 1% of runs make it to Scorch on pace. And to keep that pace going for the sub 24, he flat out needs to hit a coin flip right at the end. If you get a green rocket, you need to wait an extra 11 seconds for another attempt at the coin flip. It's slow, but you can continue the run if it's fast enough. Luckily for Jeremy, he got the red rockets he needed. But his past runs were not so fortunate. Jeremy's 8 best runs to Scorch prior to this one all got double green rockets, instantly killing every single run. The odds of that happening are 1 in 65,536, or 0.0015%. Completely ridiculous, I know, but I'm not even done talking about luck in this fight. Scorch has 2 main attacks, the lightning balls and the eggs. Ideally, you want as many lightning ball attacks as possible, as it lowers his shield faster, meaning you can hit him more frequently. Jeremy only got 1 lightning ball attack in this run, which lost him some time. But he was overjoyed with the idea that the string of green rockets was finally over. With first try red rockets, Jeremy finally had a run past Scorch that was fast enough to potentially be the world's first 23-minute time for Spyro 3. We've now come full circle, back to where this video started, with Sorceress Skip being the next goal for Jeremy. You've previously seen how most loading zones in the game are directly stored beneath the inactive portals, which allows for early entries. But for some reason, the Sorceress loading trigger is a different kind than the ones we usually see for the normal levels. This time, the loading trigger is where it should be, but is way larger than what's visible, and extends far above the door itself. It is reachable if you can get Spyro onto the castle walls, then jumping into it, as Tuval did when he discovered it in late 2013. But how exactly does Jeremy get Spyro onto the rooftop? Well, here's how. Let's take a look at that again. Jeremy gets Spyro stuck under the helmet where the Desert Ruins portal normally is. To prevent Spyro from permanently getting stuck anywhere, the developers put in a mechanic that ejects him out if he ever does find himself stuck. This is similar to the old boulder pushing strat in Bamboo Terrace, a so-called squeeze proxy, where upon the game ejecting Spyro from the helmet, he has so much speed that he gets flung up the wall and is able to glide onto the castle walls to enter the final boss. Now it's time to confront the sorceress, and this fight is like a complex game of chess. It would take me an extremely long time to cover everything here, so I'll just cover the basics. The sorceress has 3 phases: the cannon phase, the tank phase, and the UFO phase. Jeremy is going to attempt to skip the final UFO phase, since killing the sorceress with the tanks is much faster. Jeremy has labbed this fight religiously, and has studied things like spawn points for the cannons and tanks, how Agent 9 behaves in regards to shooting down the cannons and tanks, and how the sorceress moves and attacks. I'm just gonna let the fight unfold and explain some things along the way. Jeremy first starts by going to the outer ring where Agent 9 is, to get a better overview of where the cannons are flying in from. There's 5 spawn points for the cannons, but only 3 will fly in, and some cannons have priority in dropping over others. Jeremy has this all figured out, and simply waits beneath the cannon with the highest priority to drop. Once on the cannon, you have to hit the sorceress 2 times for the cannon phase to end. When a phase ends, it forces you off your current vehicle and wipes out all other vehicles on the field. However, you can sneak in a 3rd hit as long as there's a cannonball in the air as the phase ends, saving a tiny bit of time. Agent 9's targeting is a little wonky in this fight, so occasionally you'll get a second cannon drop during the tank phase. This is what happened during Jeremy's run, but he doesn't want to do too much damage and end the tank phase before the tanks themselves are on the field. Once the first tank is dropped, Jeremy shoots the sorceress once and jumps off the tank immediately. By doing this, he does enough damage to start the UFO phase. But Agent 9 is already on his way to shoot down another tank. At this point in the fight, this is the final phase, so you're never forced off your vehicle. So Jeremy uses the tank to take down the sorceress. For how complex this fight can be, Jeremy actually had one of the most simple scenarios. In his own words, the fight can often be more intricate to navigate than it was in my 23, but in receiving a random second cannon drop, I was able to create the vehicle drops I wanted pretty naturally, and without much manipulation. And that concludes Jeremy Thompson's Spyro 3 speedrun in 23 minutes and 58 seconds. To this day, no one has managed to get even remotely close, and Jeremy's days at the top will keep on building. Some might be watching this run in confusion. Why would anyone go through 20,000 attempts to get this kind of run? The only real answer is personal accomplishment. As an old saying goes, the harder the battle, the sweeter the victory. And the reason this run has stood on top for almost 3 years is because Jeremy tasted that sweet victory. He worked for several years to get this kind of run. He spent countless hours in the lab, figuring out things like the sorceress fight, and threw himself at the game over and over until the stars aligned. Just like anyone sets goals for themselves in learning an instrument or running a marathon, some find pleasure in speedrunning video games, an introspective hobby that some take quite seriously, not only in the quest to improve your own time, but also in the involvement with the friends you make along the way in the game's tight-knit communities. If you can't respect someone like Jeremy for his efforts, then that's a shame, because some were very impressed. And that's the developers themselves. In April 2018, Jeremy got invited to the Insomniac studio to play Spyro 3 in front of the very people that created the game. He was able to showcase an impressive run that clocked in at the half-hour mark. But most importantly, he was able to showcase what he and the community had discovered in the many years of speedrunning the game. Additionally, he was able to hear insights on the game's design choices, and was able to show off cool bugs that gave everybody in the room a bit of a chuckle.
Did you discover this by playing over and over again, or was it...
What? How'd you just... I discovered some of it.
Okay.
There's a large community behind it.
Okay. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and the sorceress is in the area portal, and so they bleed a lot. They're a lot larger than they appear to be. So the sorceress area portal is somewhere over there, but it just bleeds into the mouse. So if you touch that place, you go straight in.
Insomniac definitely deserves some credit for putting this together. Not every game company welcomes their speedrun communities with open arms, but Insomniac has always been very accepting. They even threw together a similar event for Ratchet & Clank speedruns, where they brought in my good pal Zem. I've always had respect for runners like Jeremy, runners that don't stop playing a category until they believe it's reached the human limit. While there's an obvious mistaken fireworks factor you can point out, it's easy to ignore the countless amount of things that went right. The raw combination of execution and luck in his 2358 is an estimated 0.012%, or 1 in 8,574. Staggeringly low odds. If anyone wants to topple this run, they would need even cleaner execution, better luck, or find new strategies to save more time. There does exist a tool-assisted speedrun of Spyro 3 that was created by Laponier and Nitrovsky, but Jeremy has claimed that virtually no strategies in the TAS were viable in actual speedruns. The TAS itself is also worth checking out, and I put a link to it in the description, but I mainly wanted to cover Jeremy's journey to achieve his ultimate run in this video. As of right now, Jeremy also holds the world record in the 100 egg category, where he achieved a new record of 50:34, as recent as August 2021. He was gonna push the category to a 49, but ran out of free time to grind the game. Jeremy, of course, has a life to live outside of the game, but sees a possible return to Spyro around April 2022. But that's just an estimate he told me. Jeremy is a guy who's never seemed to care about popularity, money, or anything that speedrunning and streaming can net you. He's just a guy that embarked on a personal journey. A man and his game, a man and his goal. Whether or not Jeremy's return to the game is later than expected, staying safe in this chaotic state of the world is definitely the main priority. I wish the absolute best to Jeremy. Thank you for being an inspiration to others, and thank you for keeping Spyro speedrunning alive. Well, I'm a little late to the occasion, but here we are. Last year's Halloween, we covered the original Silent Hill and how that game was completed to near perfection. This year, it's Silent Hill 2, where we'll take a look at how speedrunners have pushed this masterpiece to its limits for over 20 years. I hope you enjoy.
This is a mobile defense mission. You must deliver payloads and defend a number of locations when I break into the network. Be prepared for heavy resistance.
Immediately from the start of the run, a glitch is used to skip grabbing the map in the car. By inspecting the passenger seat, some text comes up that normally locks James in his place. But by quick saving the game while this text is up, full control over James can be achieved. This allows us to walk past the trigger near the stairs that tells us we have to go back for the map. Quick saving and quick loading is a feature exclusive to the PC version of Silent Hill 2, and was sort of added in last minute, meaning it can be exploited by speedrunners for a multitude of purposes. One of these purposes being James's running speed. Under normal circumstances, James will slow down to a jog after sprinting at top speed for a while, but upon quick saving, some text comes up in the bottom left that says "Game saved." When any form of text shows up on screen, it resets James's stamina completely. So in order to keep him at full running speed, quick saving frequently is required. So get used to seeing "Game saved" a lot throughout this run. Coming up is the graveyard cutscene with Angela, where a small trick can be used to skip the screen fading to white. It only saves about a second and is pretty strict on the timing, so our runner just keeps moving along after an unfortunate miss.
Continue to defend.
So who is our runner, you may be asking? If you didn't happen to catch it in the intro, this run was performed by Aaron, who is a bit of a Silent Hill speedrunning master, having held records for Silent Hill 1, 2, and 3 at multiple points in time. The run you're currently watching is the world's first completion of Silent Hill 2 in under 38 minutes, in the new game any difficulty category.
We are finished here.
Speaking of the game's category, the chainsaw was just picked up, which is normally only available on New Game Plus playthroughs of the game. The PC version of Silent Hill 2 spawns in the chainsaw regardless of whether or not you're on New Game Plus or not, and thus was debated on its allowance for new game categories. Eventually though, it was allowed, and made for some cool changes in the route overall, which I will go into later. Coming up is actually the most time-saving skip in the whole run. We're going to be performing the exact same trick that we did at the start of the game, where we will inspect the door we just came from and unlock free movement over James despite the text still being on screen. Quick saving repeatedly is necessary here to keep the text from fading away. We're going to be carrying this text for quite some time still, so I'll return to talking about its implications once we edge our way closer to Silent Hill. The other part of the category I didn't talk about is the any difficulty part. This is pretty straightforward. You can set your action level and riddle level at the start of the game to anything you want. Choosing beginner for the action level is the fastest, as it makes all the bosses die in the matter of seconds. Putting the riddle level on normal or easy doesn't really make much of a difference. If you think blazing through the game in this way is cheap and easy, Aaron also holds the world record for the 10-star category, which is this game's 100% equivalent. Link to a live commentated version of that is in the description. Upon entering Silent Hill, the game tries to lead us to a path where we'll pick up our first melee weapon, the plank, and to fight our first enemy, the lying figure. Because we've been carrying the text the whole time, we can run through the trigger next to the upcoming blood trail that shows the cutscene that tries to force us there. After passing through said trigger, we skip this part of the game entirely, and we're now free to drop the text and move on with our next objective. Our next objective is to get into the Woodside Apartments, which is this game's first proper level of sorts. Of course, we need a key to get in there, and its location is in an alleyway not too far from where we are now. So enjoy the stroll through the foggy town. If you've played this game before, you may have also noticed that all the enemies are missing. There should be some walking around the town, right? Well, this is a side effect of the text storage glitch, but everything will return back to normal once we enter the apartments. While we're getting there, I want to say thank you to the patient viewers that have been waiting for this project since my Silent Hill 1 video. This was supposed to come out on Halloween, just like last year, but my previous video got quite ambitious, and it took a lot of time. As always, if you guys like these types of videos, let me know in the comments. Especially if you want to see Silent Hill 3 for next year's Halloween. Maybe with some luck, I can deliver that within the correct month this time. Now that we're in the Woodside Apartments, we have a ton of items to collect, in classic Silent Hill fashion. The first objective is the flashlight, or the torch if you're British. James can't pick up any items without it, let alone view the map. It's either really dark, or my man's going blind. Okay, there's your cheap jump scare. I get at least one per video. That's the deal you sign up for when you decide to watch. Now that we're in the Woodside Apartments, we have a ton of items to collect, in classic Silent Hill fashion. The first objective is the flashlight, or the torch if you're British. James can't pick up any items without it, let alone view the map. It's either really dark, or my man's going blind. Okay, there's your cheap jump scare. I get at least one per video. That's the deal you sign up for when you decide to watch. Now with that in our possession, we're gonna head to the third floor, or in the UK, the second floor in it. Okay, I'll stop. Anyway, it's gonna go from fun and games to pretty fucking scary now, so have fun. We're gonna trigger a cutscene here where Laura kicks the key away from us, so we can't grab it through the bars. This is needed so we can grab it later. We're gonna head back down to the second floor and animation cancel James getting scared from the scream in the hallway. Done by quick saving as it's happening. Now, we're technically in a semi-soft locked state and can't open any doors, but we can easily get out of this state by simply walking and entering room 209. In this room, there's a clock puzzle we need to complete, but it's locked. So for now, we're just gonna grab the key to room 202 and head straight for it. In room 202, we're gonna stick our hand through a wall, get the clock key, and then head back to room 209. I'm gonna start talking about the clock quite early, since it's pretty much the most important part of the entire run. So listen up. When booting up Silent Hill 2, a counter in the game immediately starts going from frame 1 to 100,000. This counter determines your random number generated seed for the entire game. So if I start a playthrough at frame 50, I will get seed 50, and the solutions to all of the game's puzzles are tied to that frame. Aaron intentionally started the game quite fast, to hopefully hit a good seed in the high 20s or low 30s. You can figure out the frame of the game you started at by looking at which directions the hands are facing in this clock puzzle. In this case, it's 1022, which means all Aaron has to do is look over at a spreadsheet that the community made, and go, okay, 1022, that should be seed 32. The only issue with this is hitting the same frame every time is difficult for a human player, and a bad seed can have the clock hands facing in a position extremely far away from the solution of 910. This is the single biggest reset point for top runners, but luckily Aaron's clock was really good on this run, with the hands very close to the solution. For the next while, it's gonna be more item collecting. First the courtyard key, then the fire escape key, and then a pack of canned juice. So allow me to blabber on a bit more about the RNG seeds in this game. Aaron ideally wants to hit seed 33, which has the clock hands facing at 955, and the hangman puzzle later in the game in the best position. To hit this seed, Aaron needs to wait slightly more than a second on the title screen before starting the game, since the game runs at 30 frames per second. Even if you miss seed 33, getting seed 28 or 32, which is the one Aaron got, is still really good. 29 and 31 are decent as well, with 30 being okay-ish. It's really important to aim for this range, since 26, 27, 34, and 35 are all really bad. If you ever wanted to test this game and the timing didn't start from resetting the console, you could in theory wait 29 minutes on the title screen to get the literal god seed with the best RNG in the game. Yeah, crazy stuff. Let's get back on track here. Our next objective is to gather 3 separate coins for a puzzle later in the game. The first one is acquired by dropping the pack of canned juice down a trash chute, then going outside to get it. We're gonna be getting this coin later though, and get a different coin in the courtyard area by using the key that we got not too long ago. A small trick is used in this area to cancel James's stumble animation when falling into the pool. The PC version of Silent Hill 2 has hotkeys that allow you to change weapons or heal without going into the menu. So in this case, a simple swap of the weapons does the job. Now we're gonna pay a visit to Eddie, who's not feeling super hot. While there's no items in this room, you have to watch this cutscene to trigger Angela's door for later. Now we're gonna go get that coin from earlier, and a small skip is gonna be used here that you'll see a handful of times throughout this run. I'll just call it fade out cancel. After getting the coin, you can quick save and gain control over James, while the game is fading back out from the pre-rendered image. This allows us to walk back to the door as quickly as possible, saving valuable seconds. Now we're gonna use the fire escape key to head into the second section of this area, the Blue Creek Apartments. There, we'll gather our third coin from Angela's room, then head straight for the drawer with the coin puzzle. A couple of things to mention about quick saving as well is that you don't need to be spamming it indoors, since James's running speed is capped to a jog. Only when you're roaming Silent Hill or specific outdoor sections should you be quick saving a bunch, although some runners still do it indoors out of habit. You also need to be careful with quick saving through loading zones, since it can corrupt the save file, although this is a non-issue for top runners, and might only be something you encounter casually if you use the feature, or when you're first running the game. Now with all 3 coins in our possession, we're gonna head straight for the room with the puzzle, which we know the solution to, since it's the same every time. Controlling the cursor can be pretty difficult here, since the game's resolution sort of inflates the speed of the mouse. While we're putting in the coins, I can talk about something that's difficult to notice about this run, even if you played this game before. The movement used in this run is not the usual 3D tank controls. In the options menu, you have the ability to change the 2D controls, which saves bits of time in rooms with sharper turns, and it really adds up over the course of the run. For completing the puzzle, we are rewarded with the Lynn House key, and we're gonna head straight for the room where we can use it. The Lynn room is one of the rooms in the game where you can really see how much time 2D controls can save with its sharp turning. Now it's time for the boss of the apartments. Good old Pyramid Head. Little does he know, we're gonna pull out our chainsaw and cut his goddamn dick off, which gives him no time to do anything. He gets scared and runs off with his little butter knife. Now Aaron is just gonna stand in this corner to assert his dominance. Yeah, nice one, James. You really did it to him.